Hi, I'm Francesca King, Director of the University of Wyoming Writing Center and Associate Lecturer in the Learn program. In today's video, we'll explore 6 strategies for offering feedback to students at various stages of the drafting process. Throughout, we'll keep in mind our purpose as instructors, which is not simply to highlight flaws in the paper, but rather to facilitate improvement. John Bean and Dan Meltzer, in their book Engaging Ideas, suggest that when we comment on papers, we should play the role of coach, providing guidance for revision, because it is through revising that our students learn most deeply what they want to say and what their readers need for ease of comprehension. As an instructor, you might find that writing comments aimed at encouraging revision, rather than solely pointing out errors or justifying a grade, can significantly shift your perspective on reading student writing. This shift in perspective can help you appreciate the promise of a draft rather than only seeing its mistakes, and it can help you reorient yourself as an engaged responder to ideas rather than merely a corrector of their writing. Don't get me wrong, eventually most instructors do put a grade on students' final work, but that final grading task is just one type of feedback. In this video, I'll encourage you to think of other ways to approach feedback along the way. Let's get started. Maybe you don't need to provide feedback on every detail of every iteration of a student's assignment, especially when a particular issue is just one among many and you lack the energy to expand upon your points. Sometimes teachers think that if they don't consistently point out errors in every type of writing that students submit, students will think that their bad habits are acceptable for all kinds of writing. But this is not true. When you write a grocery list, you probably don't hold yourself accountable for perfect spelling. The same is true for classroom writing. When you are asking students to get some brainstorming or initial draft ideas out on the page, it may be entirely appropriate for you to withhold comments on most or even all features of that work. Simply marking student work as complete or incomplete for informal writing can save you a boatload of time. And if you do discover a common bad habit across a set of writing, you can address it through one general comment to all students, rather than agonizing over loads of feedback on each submission. Research in writing theory indicates that students can effectively address only a limited number of feedback suggestions. During the drafting stage, as highlighted by Bean and Meltzer, our role resembles that of a coach. At this stage, it is often a good goal to provide useful instruction, good advice, and warm encouragement, and to limit comments to 2 or 3 things that the writer should work on for the next draft, rather than commenting copiously on everything. But how do we decide what 2 or 3 things to focus on? It's important to establish a hierarchy of concerns, descending from higher order issues such as ideas, organization, development, and overall clarity, to lower order issues such as sentence structure, style, mechanics, spelling, and so forth. If a draft still needs revision to become reasonably successful at the higher levels, it's a good idea to refrain from mentioning the lower order concerns at this stage. Otherwise, many students choose to fix these easier things and ignore larger problems such as topic sentences, transitions, or organization. Additionally, if the draft doesn't follow the assignment at all, there is little purpose in commenting extensively on lower order issues. In those kinds of cases, a single comment may be sufficient. Tell writers that their draft is on the wrong track and that they need to start over by rereading the assignment carefully and perhaps seeking help from you. Feedback on lower order concerns such as sentence structure, style, mechanics, and spelling should typically be provided on later drafts, as comments of this nature can shut down students' critical thinking and willingness to revise ideas. From the perspective of the writing process, we call sentence editing a lower order concern, even though errors in spelling, punctuation, and grammar can of course lead to user error or impede the reader's understanding of ideas. It might be tempting to underline or circle in red pen every error, but in addition to increasing instructor workload, studies show that this doesn't help students improve their writing in the long term. Instead, taking the role of a coach can be helpful. If you as a reader are confused by a sentence structure, you might write a comment that helps a student to understand why you are confused. We all have our idiosyncrasies when it comes to grading and gripes with student writing. At times, we might evaluate papers based on strict adherence to a single criterion of writing. For example, we may be particularly attuned to improper sentence structure, punctuation, or organization. Using a rubric can be beneficial to ensure balanced assessment across many criteria and for clearly articulating the assignment objectives to both yourself and your students. It can also be a great time-saving tool, allowing instructors to quickly provide general feedback across several criteria, while then empowering instructors to focus more on providing meaningful feedback on student ideas in the form of 1 to 3 end comments. By the way, rubrics come in many different sizes, shapes, and flavors. They can be task-specific or generic. They can use different methods of describing performance levels. They can have a grid or a non-grid design. Bean and Melzer provide example rubrics in their book, Engaging Ideas, and I have had success with rubrics modeled in the book, Introduction to Rubrics, an assessment tool to save grading time, convey effective feedback, and promote student learning. Even though many students may describe negative peer review experiences, a national study of peer and instructor responses to college writing concluded with 3 positive findings. The first, peers provide similar responses as instructors when suitably trained and guided by a script or rubric. The second, students enjoy peer review and feel they benefit from it. And 3, students learn as much from reading their peers' drafts as they do from the comments they receive from peer responders or from the instructor. Based on these findings, the key to successful peer review is for instructors to explain the purpose and process of peer review and to guide students' responses through thoughtfully designed scripts or rubrics, and to remember always that the goal of peer review should lead to genuine, substantial revision. Instructors should build in passes for copy editing into their syllabus if a significant goal of the assignment or course is for students to produce work of publishable quality. One approach to coaching copy editing is Richard Haswell's practice of minimal marking, which requires students to learn to edit their own work without much instructor intervention. On final or nearly final drafts, Haswell places a check in the margin of lines where errors occur, but students are expected to read their work and find the error. To ensure student buy-in, instructors can provide an incentive by saying that the grade will be raised only after most of the errors are found and corrected. Consider, though, that while this method works well for native English speakers, it can be a challenge for English language learners who need more instructor feedback on errors than just a check mark in the margin. When working with non-native speakers, it is more effective to mark 1 or 2 patterns of error than to overwhelm the student by marking every error. Another strategy for helping all students to clear up sentence mistakes is to note a characteristic pattern of errors. Explaining a rule or a principle, such as the difference between it's and it, or what is meant by a comma splice, can help a student find this recurring error in her paper and clear up many mistakes in one swoop. When final grades are due, an instructor can be tempted to shift their role from coach to judge. At this stage, we have given lots of feedback and now want to uphold the standards of our profession, giving out high marks to those essays that have met the criteria we have set. However, we can still act as a coach at this stage by providing an end comment that is not a justification for the final grade, but a comment that drives the draft, even if it's the final draft for your class, towards future excellence. The strategy recommended by Bean and Melzer is to follow a 3-step template. The first is to list the strengths of the paper. The second is to list a summary of a limited number of problems, and the third is to give recommendations for revision. This kind of commentary can enhance the student's feeling of dignity and allows you to position yourself as a commenter, a coach, or an ally rather than a critic. It's helpful to remember how we feel when we ask a colleague to read one of our drafts. We feel apologetic and vulnerable, hoping for positive affirmation and supportive feedback. Students feel the same way. Let's review what we've learned. According to John Bean and Dan Melzer in Engaging Ideas, what roles should instructors adopt when providing feedback on student papers? The answer is coach. The coaching approach guides students towards revision rather than merely pointing out errors or justifying grades. What is the primary goal of providing feedback on student drafts during the drafting stage? The answer is to guide revision and improvement. Rather than overwhelming students with extensive feedback on every aspect of their writing, instructors are encouraged to focus on 2 or 3 key areas for improvement, prioritizing higher order concerns such as ideas, organization, and clarity. The third question is, do you need to individually comment on every problem that you see in every piece of student writing that you collect? No, you don't have to try to fix all issues in student writing every time you collect work. If you take a process approach to writing, you allow yourself and your students to strategically focus over time on specific aspects of their writing and thinking. And remember too, sometimes a rubric or a general class-level comment can allow you to skip individual feedback for an entire set of student work. Thank you for watching.